The amphibious Battle of Gela was the opening engagement of the United States portion of the Allied invasion of Sicily. United States Navy ships landed United States Army troops along the eastern end of the south coast of Sicily, and withstood attacks by Luftwaffe and Regia Aeronautica aircraft while defending the beachhead against German and Italian tanks until the Army captured the Ponte Olivo Airfield for use by United States Army Air Forces planes. The battle convinced United States Army officers of the value of naval artillery support, and revealed problems coordinating air support from autonomous air forces during amphibious operations. Background: the invasion of Sicily followed the Allied capture of Tunisia in North Africa and preceded the Allied invasion of Italy as a means of diverting Axis forces from the Eastern Front with the Soviet Union until the Western Allies were prepared to invade occupied Europe through France. Ground forces under overall command of General Dwight.D. Eisenhower were transported by naval forces under overall command of Admiral Andrew Cunningham. The invasion was constrained by marginally effective air cover from 670 Allied fighters operating at maximum range, which limited patrolling time over 100 miles of invasion beaches and prevented proportional response to incoming raids. There were 3 wings of Supermarine Spitfires operating from airfields on Malta and 2 groups of Curtiss P-40 Warhawks from airfields on Pantelleria and Gozo. Allied air forces refused to provide air support for Allied ground forces until Axis air forces had been neutralized, and since Axis bombing continued through the 12th of July, the role of Allied aircraft was negligible in the fighting at Gela. Pre-invasion strategic bombing reduced Luftflotte strength to 175 planes in Sicily, but 418 additional Luftwaffe and 449 Regia Aeronautica aircraft remained serviceable at bases in Italy to be flown in as required. Allied ground forces had no idea when, where, in what numbers, or under what circumstances they might see Allied aircraft. Unlike the earlier invasion of North Africa and later invasion of Italy, the United States invasion fleet included no aircraft carriers. Carriers which had supported the American landings during Operation Torch had been reassigned without replacement. The escort carrier Assanti was defending UG convoys from U-boats, while the other 3 Sangamon-class escort carriers had been transferred to the Pacific to support the Guadalcanal campaign, and the fleet carrier US Ranger was training new pilots on the United States Atlantic coast. Setting: the fishing village of Gela was on a plateau at 150-foot elevation behind a beach with a 900-foot pier. Plains cultivated for grain extended inland behind the community of 32,000. The mouth of the Gela River was 1 mile east of the pier, and the mouth of the Ocate River was 5 miles east of the Gela River. The sand and stone beach between the rivers was from 10 to 30 yards wide and backed by 900 yards of dunes. The drainage divide between the 2 rivers was the 400-foot Piano Lupo Highland 7 miles northeast of Gela, with a strategic junction of roads, including the coastal highway between Gela and Sciglietti and roads leading inland to Nishemi and Caltagirone. American forces. The 52D Troop Carrier Wing of 222 Douglas C-47 Skytrains from North Africa carried the airborne 505th Infantry Regiment for a parachute drop over Piano Lupo. A Western task force of 601 ships under the command of Vice Admiral Henry Kent Hewitt carried the 7th United States Army under the command of Lieutenant General George S. Patton. Both officers sailed aboard the flagship transport Monrovia. The Western Task Force was divided into Task Force C to land the 3rd Infantry Division near Licata on the western flank, Task Force K to land the 45th Infantry Division near Sciglietti on the eastern flank, and Task Force H to land the 16th and 26th Regiments of the 1st Infantry Division with the 531st Engineers and the 1st and 4th Rangers near Gela. The reserve force of the 2nd Armoured Division and 18th Regiment of the 1st Infantry Division was landed on the first day of fighting to support the 1st Infantry Division. Axis forces. The Gela invasion beaches were defended by the Italian 18 Coastal Brigade. The town itself was defended by the Italian 429th Coastal Battalion using barbed wire, concrete pillboxes, and anti-tank guns. The beach on either side of the Gela pier was mined and defended by machine guns on both flanks and artillery batteries 7,000 yards inland, on Cape Soprano to the west, and on Monte Lungo to the north. The sand and stone beach on the east side of the Gela River was defended by 3 machine gun nests at the east end and by artillery batteries 9,000 yards to the north and 10,000 yards to the northwest. The Italian 4 Mountain Infantry Division Livorno was positioned near Niscemi and supported by the Italian Mobile Group at Ponte Olivo with 38 obsolescent Fiat 3000 tanks to respond when invasion points became known. They were joined on the afternoon of the first day by the German Fallschirm Panzer Division 1 Hermann Göring with 46 Panzerkampfwagen 3 and 32 Panzerkampfwagen IV tanks from Caltagirone, reinforced with a regiment of the 15th Panzer Grenadiers with the 215th Panzer Battalion attached with 17 Tiger I tanks. Air support was available from 1 Staffel of Jagdgeschwader 53 Messerschmitt Bf 109 G6 fighters at Catania, 2 Staffeln of Jagdgeschwader 77 Bf 109 G6 fighters at Trapani, another Jagdgeschwader 77 Staffel at Chiaca, 2 Staffeln of Schlechtgeschwader 2 Focke-Wulf FW-19 No F2 ground attack fighter bombers at Castelvetrano, and 2 Staffeln of Schnellkampfgeschwader 10 FW-19 A5 fast bombers at Gerbani Airfield. Junkers Ju-88A and Savoia Marchetti M79 medium bombers could reach Gela from bases in Italy. Prelude. The larger transports sailed from Oran on the 5th of July as convoy NCF-1 and were screened by destroyers as they hugged the African coast eastbound, while the gunfire support cruisers sailed on a parallel course as a covering force to the north. The LSDs, LCIs, LCTs and patrol craft sailed directly from Tunisia as convoys TJM-1 and 1 Ticastani Simoni. The convoys were spotted and all German forces on Sicily were alerted at 1840 on the 9th of July. Winds of 35 knots caused rough seas and widespread seasickness among the embarked troops. Winds moderated on the evening of the 9th of July as ships divided into task forces CH and K and proceeded to assigned anchorages off the Sicilian coast. As the ships anchored, airborne troops of the 505th Infantry Regiment were scattered by wind and aircraft navigation errors. Fewer than 200 of the 3,400 paratroopers were able to reach the strategic Piano Lupo highland before the defending Livorno division arrived. The transports Joseph D. Dickman, Prince Charles, Prince Leopold, Oberon, Barnet, Monrovia, Leon, Samuel Chase, Betelgeuse, Thurston, Elizabeth C. Stanton, Arizaba, and Chateau Thierry anchored approximately 6 nautical miles off the mouth south of the Gela River with LCIs, LSDs, and salvage vessels slightly further offshore, and the destroyers US Murphy, Glennon, Maddox, Bernardo, and Dallas screened the seaward side of the anchorage. The light cruiser US Savannah and destroyer US Shubrick patrolled the gunfire support area west of the anchorage, while US Boise and Jeffers patrolled a similar gunfire support area east of the anchorage. The Army hoped for surprise, and declined Navy suggestions for pre-invasion bombardment. Battle. The 10th of July, the transports started unloading shortly after midnight, and General Gazzoni declared an emergency at 1 o'clock. The first assault wave from Barnett, Leon, Thurston and Stanton landed about 2:45. Shubrick destroyed 218 Coastal Brigade searchlights illuminating the first wave and fired on several 18 Coastal Brigade artillery positions. Initial waves had landed on all beaches by 3:35. The Rangers landed on either side of the Gela Pier. The 26th Regiment landed on the east side of the Gela River, and the 16th Regiment landed east of the 26th Regiment. 300 men of the 45th Division's 180th Regiment accidentally landed among the 16th Regiment on beaches west of the Acate River. The 12th Air Support Command planned to provide air cover of 12 fighters over Gela during daylight hours, but the number actually available was never more than 8 and sometimes as few as 2. Axis air raids took place around the clock, so no Allied fighters were present when most Axis air raids arrived. The first Allied fighters arrived at 5:01 before sunrise at 5:46, but Axis bombers had arrived before first light. Bombs and flares began falling at 4:21 and Maddox sank at 4:58 with 212 of her crew less than 2 minutes after being hit by a bomb dropped by an Italian Stuka. The minesweeper US Sentinel was also damaged during the raid and sank later that morning. LSD-345 and submarine chaser PC-621 were damaged by collision while maneuvering to avoid bombs. Savannah shot down a Ju-88 at 5:14. Absence of fighter cover during the initial Axis bombing attack created an enduring shipboard perception they were responsible for their own air defense and should prioritize aircraft destruction above identification. Axis fighters and fighter bombers were able to make undetected low-level approaches from Catania under the fleet's radar horizon by flying down the Acate River Canyon at the eastern edge of the Gela beachhead. Allied fighters patrolling at altitude to engage medium bombers were perceived as dive bombers and subjected to friendly fire losses when they attempted to engage low-altitude air raids. Ships were using proximity-fused anti-aircraft ammunition for the first time in the European theater. The Rangers attacked the town of Gela hoping to capture the Gela Pier for offloading the LSDs. Italian defenders destroyed the pier with demolition charges at 2:40, but the Rangers captured the town by 8 o'clock with 3/8 cm FKM, 5 artillery pieces and 200 prisoners of the 18 Coastal Brigade defenders. The 429th Coastal Battalion had lost 194 men killed or wounded, 45% of its force. The 1st Infantry Division hoped to capture the Ponte Olivo Airfield within 24 hours of landing. The 26th Regiment was prepared to assist the Rangers in capturing Gela, but, when that proved unnecessary, began moving inland to take the high ground west of Ponte Olivo. The 16th Regiment intended to join the 505th Airborne Regiment assumed to be in control of the Piano Lupo highland east of Ponte Olivo. There they planned to defend against attacks from Nishemi and prepare for a coordinated attack with the 26th Regiment against Ponte Olivo. The The 16th Regiment encountered heavy resistance from the machine gun nests at the east end of the landing beach, and 18 Coastal Brigade artillery and mortars were targeting the beach as LCIs began landing support troops east of the Gela River at 4:30. After sunrise, minesweepers began clearing mines near the beach so the LSDs could start landing vehicles at 8 o'clock. LSD 338 was straddled by Italian shellfire as soon as it beached. Italian artillery intensified firing at the eastern beach from 7:10 until Boise and Savannah temporarily silenced the batteries at 9:40. Landing craft temporarily stopped using the beach when Italian artillery resumed firing at 10:10 and destroyed some landing craft and supplies offloaded onto the beach. Half-tracks attempting to move inland from the eastern beach encountered an Italian minefield and were delayed until the minefield was cleared at 12:12. By noon, not a single piece of Allied artillery had been landed, and none of the 10 tanks assigned to the 1st Division were ashore. Landing craft had to wait up to 4 hours to be unloaded while the beach was congested by vehicles waiting to move inland. Unloading was frequently interrupted by air attacks and artillery fire, and a shortage of landing craft developed as nearly 200 were disabled by shellfire broaching in the surf. Unexpected sandbars paralleled the beach 150 yards offshore and prevented some landing craft from getting ashore to offload the cargo. In the confusion ashore, some of the 1st Infantry Division's supporting artillery was diverted to the Licata beaches to the west and the Sciglietti beaches to the east, and was significantly delayed traveling overland to Gela. Boise and Savannah launched Curtiss Sock Seagull observation seaplanes at 6 o'clock to locate targets and perform gun respotting. Bf-109s had shot down both Savannah planes by 7:30 as the Italian Livorno Division launched a three-prong counterattack to recapture Gela. The Italian counterattack was reported by an American newspaper, supported by no less than 45 tanks. A considerable force of infantry of the Livorno Division attacked the American troops around Gela. The American division beat them back with severe casualties. This was the heaviest response to the Allied advance. An infantry column from Butera approached Gela from the west, while a 2nd Infantry column preceded by 13 Fiat 3000 tanks approached Gela along the road from Ponte Olivo, and a 3rd Infantry column preceded by about 25 Fiat 3000 tanks approached the beachhead east of the Gela River from Nishami. Savannah launched its 2 remaining SOCs at 8:30 as ranges directed Shubrick gunfire, destroying 3 of the tanks approaching Gela along the Ponte Olivo Road. Surviving tanks entered the town of Gela while the Italian infantry was immobilized by gunfire from Shubrick. The Rangers destroyed 3 of the tanks before the remaining 7 retreated with their accompanying infantry. The Rangers used the captured 8 cm Italian artillery to repel the Livorno Division infantry column approaching Gela from Butera. Although unable to retake Gela, Lieutenant Colonel Dante Hugo Leonardi's 3rd Battalion, 34th Infantry Regiment took a number of prisoners from leading elements of the 26th Infantry Regiment. The Italian column from Nishami pushed through a 505th Regiment roadblock to reach the Piano Lupo Road junction before troops from the 16th Regiment arrived. Boise opened fire at 9:10 after their SOCs observed the Italian column approaching along the Nishami Road and radioed coordinates before being chased off by Bf 109s. The Livorno infantry remained in previously prepared defensive positions to avoid the naval gunfire while the tanks continued toward the beachhead, until they encountered the two forward battalions of the 16th Regiment. Bf 109s shot down another Savannah Sock and the last Sock returned to the ship damaged. Boise, Savannah and the British monitor HMS Abercrombie fired on the Italian column from 10:47 to 11:08. The 16th Regiment occupied Piano Lupo as the tanks and infantry from Nishimi withdrew under combined pressure from naval gunfire, and the 16th Infantry Regiment, Boise, launched the last operational Sock at 12:19 and it was shot down by Bf 109s as Boise fired on the Italians from 12:45 to 12:51. The naval artillery destroyed 2 tanks and the 16th Infantry destroyed 2 others. Axis bombing raids hit the beachhead 13:20 and 14:30 in support of the Hermann Göring Division Armored Regiment counterattack against the eastern beachhead. A high-altitude bombing attack at 15:30 was followed by intermittent attacks for the remainder of the day. The Hermann Göring Division approached Piano Lupo from Nishimi while 15th Panzer Grenadiers supported by 17 Tiger I tanks approached from the Acate River. After some difficulty maneuvering the Tiger tanks through olive groves, the 15th Panzer Grenadiers overran the 1st Battalion of the 45th Division's 180th Infantry Regiment before being stopped by the 3rd Battalion. The Hermann Göring Division pushed through the 16th Infantry Regiment in Piano Lupo, but paused as they encountered naval gunfire when moving off the Piano Lupo highland toward the beachhead. After waiting through the remaining daylight for a rendezvous with the stalled 15th Panzer Grenadiers, the Hermann Göring Division withdrew at dusk to regroup. As the Hermann Göring Division withdrew, the reserve force of the 2nd Armored Division and 18th Infantry Regiment began landing at 1700 over the beaches being vacated by the 26th Infantry Regiment. LSD 313 was attempting to offload anti-tank artillery when 3 Air 4 fighters dropped bombs on the pontoon causeway being used to offload the LSDs. One bomb struck LSD 313, killing 21 men, damaging embarked vehicles, and igniting a gasoline fire causing a series of ammunition explosions. The burning LSD was abandoned at 1824, and continuing explosions scattered the pontoons, causing nearby LSD 312 to broach, and prevented offloading of more LSDs. The 1st Infantry Division requested extended air cover after being bombed from 1730 to 1930, and Axis bombing continued at a rate of 275 to 300 sorties per day, with half arriving during hours of darkness. Gunfire support ships provided covering fire as the 1st Infantry Division began retreating back toward the beach at 2150 under cover of darkness. Only 3 LSDs had been unloaded when the 1st Infantry Division requested immediate tank support at 2215. Axis bombing of beaches and ships intensified at 2245. The Luftwaffe had flown 370 sorties on the 10th of July and lost 16 aircraft, destroyed or missing. According to Italian sources, 141 sorties were flown by the Regia Aeronautica, which lost 11 aircraft on the first day of the landings. That evening, Italian Stukas managed to sink the Indian hospital ship Talamba 3-5 NMI off the beaches of Sicily, although the 400 wounded aboard were successfully evacuated. The 11th of July tugs refloated LSD-312 about midnight. The first American tanks were landed at 2 o'clock, and these 67th Armor Regiment vehicles promptly became stuck in soft beach sand. US Butler replaced Shubrick as the Western gunfire support destroyer at 5:30, and US Glennon replaced Jeffers as the Eastern destroyer at 6:20. 12 M79s bombed the transport anchorage at 6:35, holing Dickman and Dirisaber with near-miss bomb fragments and striking Barnett with a bomb, killing 7 Army personnel, wounding 35 more, and starting a fire. It was the first of 14 Axis air raids on the beachhead that day, and covered a coordinated Axis attack, while the Livorno Division attacked the ranges at Gela in 3 columns from the west side of the Gela River. The Hermann Göring Division attacked the 1st Infantry Division beachhead on the east side of the Gela River. 60 Panzerkampfwagen 3 and Panzerkampfwagen IV tanks surviving the previous day's naval gunfire advanced in 2 columns. The 1st Battalion advanced from Nishemi and the 2nd Battalion from the Ponte Olivo Airfield, while the 15th Panzer Grenadiers again advanced down the Icade River Valley to the east. The German forces from the east planned to meet the Italian forces from the west at the Gela beachhead. LSD-2 landed 5 American tanks at 8:45, and they immediately went into action without being dewaterproofed. By that time, the German tanks were within 2,400 yards of the beachhead. Every man on the beach, including yeomen, electricians, carpenters, and intelligence and supply officers of the Advanced Naval Base Group, was hastily armed and formed a firing line along the dunes with engineers of the Army shore parties. Ships began gunfire support requested by shore parties at 9:15, and Boise fired on the tanks from 10:40 to 11:42. Army observers reported 13 tanks destroyed by Boise, but after the war it was claimed that majority of these had been destroyed by the 4 mobile tanks of CCB, 2nd Armored Division. The 15th Panzer Grenadiers in the Icade River Valley were stopped by the 505th Airborne Infantry troops who had landed 36 hours earlier, and the westernmost column of the Livorno Division was stopped by the 3rd Infantry Division. Savannah fired 500 rounds of 6-inch shells, killing more than half of the Italian infantry advancing on Gela and leaving human bodies hanging from trees. Ranges took 400 prisoners from the dazed survivors, while American forces ashore stopped the Axis advance. Mine layers spent the afternoon placing a protective minefield offshore of the anchorage. Axis bombing of the anchorage resumed at 12:35 and continued intermittently, with repeated attacks from 13:51 to 15:35. A 15:45 attack by 35 Ju-88s, with escorting Me-109s, hit the Liberty ship Robert Rowan. The Liberty ship's ammunition cargo detonated at 17:30, but the ship didn't sink in the shallow anchorage, and fires illuminated the anchorage for a heavy bombing attack from 1947 to 1952, followed by a series of dive bombing attacks beginning at 21:34, and lasting past midnight. Many ships were damaged by near misses, but only 1 LSD remained to be unloaded at 1600. Boise fired at Nishemi from 1826 to 1937. Surviving Axis tanks began to withdraw under cover of darkness at 22:35. The 12th of July, the invasion convoy was 90% unloaded before dawn, and the 1st Infantry Division captured the Ponte Olivo Airfield at 8:45, approximately 27 hours later than planned. Allied fighters successfully broke up an Axis bomber raid at 9:36, and the daily number of Axis bombing sorties was halved by the end of the day. Ships continued to provide gunfire support, and Butler fired on tanks near Ponte Olivo Airfield from 11:26 to 11:35. General Patton left Monrovia at 1700 to establish headquarters ashore. The 12th Air Force 27th Fighter Bomber Group landed North American A-36 Apache ground support aircraft at Ponte Olivo as soon as the airfield was declared secure for operations, and provided air support for continuing operations against German and Italian forces. Citations